Welcome to Sleep Shaper, your peaceful sanctuary for expertly crafted sleep stories designed to help you unwind and drift into a deeper, more restful sleep. I am Saiful, your host. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me tonight as we embark on a journey through the calm, quiet streets of a peaceful town on a winter's night. Tonight, we'll settle into the stillness of the evening, where the streets are lined with soft, glowing streetlights, casting gentle halos on the freshly fallen snow. The world around us is hushed, wrapped in a quiet, tranquil embrace. As we drive through the calm, we'll let the soft hum of the tires and the peaceful rhythm of the night guide us into relaxation. With every breath, feel the world outside fade away, leaving only the soothing silence and gentle glow of the quiet streets. Now, as the snow settles gently outside, take a moment to relax and allow your body to soften, to release all the weight that you may still be carrying. Let your body sink into the surface beneath you, supported and safe. With each breath, allow yourself to relax deeper, feeling the tension melt away with each exhale. Take a slow, deep breath in and exhale, releasing any remaining stress or worries. Let each breath fill you with calm, and with each exhale, let go of any heaviness, any lingering thoughts from the day. Feel the softness of the moment wrap around you, like the quiet snow outside, covering everything in a blanket of peace. Imagine now that you are standing in the peaceful stillness of that quiet town, the air crisp and fresh. The snow continues to fall gently around you, soft and comforting. It is as though the world itself is breathing slowly with you, in perfect harmony. Feel the stillness in the air, and with each breath, feel yourself becoming more connected to the calmness around you. With every inhalation, you draw in peace. With every exhalation, you release anything that doesn't serve you. As you stand there, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the night, imagine the weight of the past gently lifting from your shoulders, leaving you lighter and more at ease. The snow is soft, pure, and forgiving, just like the quiet acceptance that comes with letting go. Feel the warmth within your chest, a gentle glow of peace and understanding. You've confronted the past, and now you are free. Each breath you take fills you with the serenity of that release. Let the soothing rhythm of your breath guide you deeper into relaxation, as you feel the stillness of the town around you, quiet and calm. Mirrored in your own body, the town is peaceful now, and so are you. Let the silence surround you, holding you gently, like the soft snowfall that blankets the earth. Feel your body, mind, and spirit resting deeply in this moment of peace. There is nothing more you need to do. There is only this moment of calm, only this deep, quiet release. Take one more deep breath in, filling your lungs with calm, and then exhale, letting everything go. Let the world fall away and drift deeper into this moment of rest, where peace and stillness are yours.
The night stretched on in a blanket of silence, the kind of silence that felt as though the world had paused for a moment, holding its breath. Mark drove alone through the snow-dusted streets of the small town, the rhythmic hum of his car's engine, the only sound breaking the stillness. His headlights cut through the thickening fog, casting soft halos of light that shimmered delicately against the falling snowflakes. Each flake, light as a feather, landed and melted into the white blanket that covered the road, making the world appear untouched, frozen in time. It was as though the whole world had slowed down. The trees lining the street stood tall and stoic, their branches heavy with snow, sparkling faintly in the dim light from the street lamps. Each tree was an isolated figure in the night, standing still in its own quiet reverie, the snow settling softly on their limbs. The streetlights illuminated the road ahead in soft pools of yellow, their light casting long shadows that stretched over the snow-covered ground, creating an almost ethereal glow in the stillness. Mark sank deeper into his seat, the warmth of the car cocooning him from the cold outside. The air was crisp, sharp even, but inside the car it was comfortable and cozy. He inhaled slowly. The faint scent of pine from the trees around him, mixing with the cold, fresh winter air that crept through the cracks in the window. It was a scent that calmed him, evoking memories of childhood winter nights, of warmth, of home, of simplicity. The world outside felt far away. It felt as if everything had quieted, as if he was the only one moving through the town, the only one awake in a world frozen in the night. There was no traffic, no sound, just the soft whisper of snowflakes against the windshield as they drifted slowly down. He could hear the snow's delicate touch against the glass, a soft swish, a sound that made the world outside feel even more distant, even more serene. It was a peaceful rhythm, the kind that soothed his thoughts, urging him to relax. He made a gentle turn, his tires crunching over the snow, the sound like the softest of whispers. As he drove through the quiet streets, he felt a wave of calm wash over him, as if the weight of the world had been left behind somewhere far away. He could sense the town around him, the slumbering houses tucked behind layers of snow, their windows glowing softly, hinting at warmth within. It should have felt comforting, familiar even, but there was something about the silence that felt too perfect, too still. Mark turned another corner, driving deeper into the heart of the town. The street was quieter here, the houses now veiled by thick curtains of snow, the warm light from inside shining faintly through the frosted windows. The town was asleep, peaceful, serene, untouched by the outside world. But as he passed by the houses, something caught his eye. A shadow moving against the streetlight. It was a fleeting shape, just a flicker at the edge of his vision. And when he blinked, it was gone. He shook his head, dismissing it as a trick of the fog. The town was still, and yet there was an odd sensation, a subtle shift, as if the air itself had thickened just for a moment. But when he rounded the next corner, it happened again. A figure, standing by the sidewalk, perfectly still, as if waiting, watching. Mark's heart skipped a beat, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. He stared ahead, trying to make sense of it. It was nothing more than a shadow, just another trick of the streetlight, but there was something unsettling about the stillness of it. No movement, no sound, just a dark figure standing in the snow, its features obscured by the night. He took Another turn, his pulse quickening. As he drove further into the town, the figure seemed to multiply. Another, then another. Standing on the sidewalks facing him, unmoving, watching. Mark's breath caught, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. There was no sound, no movement, only the snow falling gently around them. It felt wrong, it felt off. The figures remained still as he passed by, each one standing like a sentinel, waiting, their dark outlines standing in stark contrast to the soft glow of the streetlights. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. The peaceful silence that had once enveloped the town now felt oppressive, heavy with the weight of the unknown. The warmth of the car, the gentle hum of the engine, none of it brought comfort now. Instead, an unsettling feeling gnawed at him, a sense that he was no longer alone, even though the streets were completely empty. The soft crunch of snow under his tires, the rhythm of his driving, everything suddenly felt distorted. The peaceful stillness of the night, the calming snow, the glow of the streetlights, they all seemed to be hiding something. Mark's pulse raced. The town had felt like a retreat, an escape from the noise of his life, but now it felt like a trap, like something was waiting for him to step deeper into its quiet streets. Mark's hands tightened around the steering wheel as he slowly eased the car forward. His breath fogged up the windshield, and with each exhale his heart beat faster, his pulse racing in response to the unsettling sight outside. The figures remained standing motionless along the sidewalks, their shapes still and unblinking, as if carved from the very shadows of the night. The streetlights flickered as he passed under them, casting brief flashes of light across the figures, their outlines sharp against the snowy ground. But the shadows that clung to them were deep and impenetrable, concealing their faces. No movement, not even a shift in posture. Only the heavy, oppressive silence that hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Mark glanced at the rearview mirror, his mind racing for some logical explanation. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe they were people, just waiting for someone, standing still in the quiet of the snowstorm. Maybe he was seeing things, tired from the long drive, his mind playing tricks on him. But the longer he stared, the more the feeling of dread crept into his chest. His heartbeat echoed in his ears, the sound steady and loud as it drowned out the steady hum of the engine. He turned another corner, hoping to leave the strange figures behind, but as he did, his headlights caught more of them. There were more. Now, so many that they seemed to stretch endlessly down the street. They stood in the same pose, their bodies rigid, their heads tilted slightly, as if they were all waiting for something, or someone. Mark slowed the car, his tires crunching softly on the snow as he approached the figures. His grip on the wheel tightened. The eerie stillness of it all sent a chill down his spine, and his mind fought to make sense of what was happening. His eyes darted back and forth, unable to focus on just one figure. They all seemed to blend together in the cold night, like shadows tangled in the soft glow of the street lamps. He glanced at the sidewalk to his right, where a figure stood so close to the edge of the road that he could almost feel its presence inside the car. The figure was tall, its shape indistinct, but something about it, its stillness, its unwavering gaze, made Mark's stomach tighten. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. His breath quickened and he turned his gaze forward, his eyes focusing on the road ahead as he drove past them. But there was no relief. They were everywhere now. They weren't just standing by the streetlights. They were lined along the sidewalks, scattered in the shadows between houses, lining the road like silent spectators. His breath fogged up the windshield again, and Mark wiped it away quickly, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. The quiet had turned from peaceful to suffocating, and the weight of it pressed down on him like the snow that fell relentlessly from the sky. The world outside had become a heavy, muffled dream, and the shadows of these figures, their unblinking eyes, their silent presence, pulled at something deep inside him. A sense of isolation, a feeling that the world was no longer his own. Mark's mind raced, trying to find an answer. Were they real? Were they people frozen in time, mere projections of his imagination? The more he tried to convince himself that it was just his mind playing tricks, the less he could deny the reality of it. The way they stood, unwavering, unmoving, like statues, too perfect to be alive. He turned the corner sharply, his tires slipping slightly on the snow, and the figures remained. As he glanced through the side mirror, he swore he saw them still, watching him, their stillness now more unsettling than ever. He took another turn, his movements becoming more erratic, and still the figures appeared. The street lights flickered again, their light casting strange shadows across the road, and Mark's eyes darted back and forth, trying to focus on something, anything that would make sense of the scene unfolding around him. But there was nothing to grasp, nothing to hold on to. The snow continued to fall, heavier now, as if it were closing in on him, as if the town itself were becoming a cocoon, isolating him from everything beyond its edges. The air had become thick, and the faint hum of his car's engine felt like a distant echo, muffled by the strange pressing quiet that surrounded him. The only sound was the soft crunch of the tires on the snow, a rhythm that no longer comforted him, but reminded him of how alone he was in this world of shifting shadows. Mark's gaze flickered to the figures once more, their heads turning, their gazes following him with a precision that felt too calculated, too deliberate. They weren't just watching, they were waiting. Waiting for him to understand, to react, to make a choice. But what choice was there? How could he escape what he could barely understand? The silence stretched out around him, the cold settling deeper into his bones, and as he continued down the winding, snow-covered streets, Mark knew one thing. He wasn't just driving through the town. The town had become a maze, a trap, and the figures were not merely inhabitants of this place. They were the very essence of it. They were waiting for him to realize the truth. Mark's mind was a whirlwind, struggling to piece together the bizarre reality unfolding before him. His grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled, and his eyes darted between the road ahead and the figures that seemed to multiply with every turn he took. The world outside, once so peaceful, had become a maze, shifting in ways that Mark couldn't comprehend. The streets, once familiar, were no longer the same. Each corner he turned seemed to lead him deeper into the town, only to have him circle back to where he started. He passed the same houses, the same streetlights, the same figures standing, motionless by the side of the road, like sentinels in a never-ending dream. His headlights cast soft, golden halos on the snow-covered streets, but no matter how far he drove, the town refused to let him go. It was as though the roads were alive, twisting and folding in on themselves, guiding him deeper into the heart of the strange, silent town. Mark could feel it. The town was shifting, the familiar streets had become unfamiliar, and the once comforting sense of solitude had turned into a suffocating isolation. With every turn, the town seemed to rearrange itself like a puzzle that refused to be solved. The trees that had once stood tall and still along the road were now leaning in, their snow-covered branches hanging low, as if closing in on him. The streetlights flickered more erratically now, their dim light casting unsettling shadows that stretched far beyond their reach. The air felt heavier with each passing moment, thick with the weight of the snow and the growing sense that something was wrong, something beyond his understanding. Mark's breath fogged up the windshield again, and he wiped it away quickly, his eyes scanning the road for some sign of familiarity. But there was none. The street signs, the houses, the snow, it was all the same, and yet it was all different. The town had become a shifting, dreamlike landscape, and Mark was trapped in it. He glanced at the rearview mirror. The figures, those strange, silent forms, were still there, following him, not just watching from the sides of the road now, but following him in the distance, their outlines becoming clearer in the rear view, as if they were multiplying, spreading out behind him like a silent army. His breath hitched, and he took a sharp turn, his tires slipping slightly on the icy road. He was no longer sure if he was even moving forward anymore. The streets seemed to loop back on themselves, pulling him into the same spaces over and over. The car hummed beneath him, its steady rhythm no longer offering comfort. The engine sounded distant, almost hollow, as if the car itself were a part of this strange reality that had swallowed him whole. Mark's pulse quickened, his heart thudding in his chest. The whispers from earlier, soft, indistinct murmurs, had returned just beyond the edges of his hearing. They weren't coming from the figures anymore. They were coming from the very walls of the town, the buildings, the trees. The town itself seemed to be whispering to him, beckoning him deeper into its shifting maze. The snow had grown heavier now, falling faster, the soft flakes swirling around him in a thick, ghostly fog. He could hardly see more than a few feet ahead. His headlights struggled to pierce the thick curtain of white, casting strange shadows on the road, making the street look even more unfamiliar. He had no sense of direction anymore. Every turn, every street felt like he was spiraling inwards, like the town was folding him into itself, trapping him in an endless loop. Mark tried to focus on the sound of his tires crunching through the snow, but the rhythmic noise seemed to lose its comforting quality. It had become a hollow echo in his mind, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him. His grip on the steering wheel tightened further, his knuckles turning white. The streets seemed endless now, stretching out before him like a labyrinth with no way out. He took another turn, his heart racing, but when he looked ahead, he was met with the same figures, the same streetlights, the same houses. Nothing had changed. He had driven in a circle. The same dark silhouettes stood by the road, their heads turning in unison as he passed. The figures were multiplying again, their shapes blurring together in the snow, like shadows bleeding into one another. Mark slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly as he came to a halt in the middle of the road. His breath was shallow, his chest tight with fear. He was no longer sure if this was reality. Was he awake? Was this really happening? He looked out the windshield, his gaze fixed on the figures standing just ahead. But now, something was different. Their faces, once hidden by the darkness, were now clearer. In the soft glow of the headlights, Mark could see them. His eyes widened in horror. They were people he had known, faces from his past, people he had forgotten, or thought he had forgotten. There was Sarah, his childhood friend, standing still with that same quiet smile she had when they were young. There was Lily, the girl he had never told the truth to, her face expressionless, her eyes locked on him. There was John, the man he had betrayed years ago, standing silently by the road, his face full of unspoken words. Mark's breath caught in his throat. They weren't just standing there. They were waiting for him. The town was no longer just a place. It was a mirror, reflecting his past back at him. He couldn't escape. The town had become a trap. And these figures, these people from his past, were the ones holding him there. The whispers grew louder now, clearer, though the figures remained silent. You can't escape, Mark. You never left. You never faced it. The words chilled him to the bone. The town wasn't just a place he was trapped in. It was a place where the past came to confront him. The figures, the streetlights, the falling snow, it was all a part of this reckoning. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. He had to face them. He had to face the truth he had been running from. Only then would the town let him go. The figures, once distant and blurred, were now clear, too clear. As Mark's headlights swept over them, his heart began to race uncontrollably. Their faces were frozen, unmoving, yet somehow their presence felt more alive than anything he had experienced before. His breath caught in his throat as he realized that the people standing in the snow were not just random strangers. These were faces he knew, faces from his past. There was Sarah, his childhood friend, with that quiet, knowing smile she had always worn, even when they were younger. She stood there in the snow, her gaze fixed on him, her eyes full of something Mark couldn't place. Regret, Perhaps, or something deeper, something that he wasn't ready to confront. Then there was Lily. Lily, the girl he had loved from afar but never had the courage to tell. Her face was expressionless, her dark eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Lily had always been a mystery to him, and now seeing her face, frozen in time, was like opening a door to a memory he had long since buried. And John, the man Mark had wronged years ago. The betrayal, the unspoken apology Mark had never given, and the guilt that had followed him since. John's face was unreadable, but there was something in the air, something heavy, like an unspoken judgment that Mark couldn't escape. Mark's hands trembled on the steering wheel, his vision swimming, his pulse throbbed in his temples, a constant drumbeat that seemed to echo in time with the ticking of his car's clock. The snow continued to fall in thick flakes, muffling the world in an eerie silence, but the figures, his past, remained, standing in the same stillness, watching him, waiting. The headlights cast long shadows, stretching over the snow, distorting their forms. The streetlights flickered above them, their light casting a sickly yellow glow over the figures, accentuating the haunting stillness of the moment. Every detail seemed amplified, the way the snow settled delicately on their hair, the way their clothes, frozen by the cold, appeared to be stuck in time that Mark could no longer escape. As he drove past them, a sudden surge of panic gripped him. He couldn't breathe. The car felt too small, the air too thick, the town too suffocating. The whispers in the air had grown louder, almost impossible to ignore now, their voices threading through the snow, winding their way into his mind, like threads of a rope, pulling him deeper into the web of his own regrets. You never apologized. You left us behind. The voices were familiar. They were the voices of his past, of mistakes he had made, of people he had hurt and abandoned. But there was no place to hide from them now, no place to run. The town, the figures, they were all part of the same reckoning, and Mark was trapped in it, facing the consequences of his own actions. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white, and he drove faster, desperate to leave the figures behind. But the more he tried to escape, the more they appeared. They were no longer just standing on the streets. They had moved into the road, blocking his way, their cold, silent forms emerging from the snow, always just ahead of him. Mark turned the wheel sharply, his tires screeching on the icy road, but the road didn't bend the way it should have. It curved back on itself, leading him right back to the same street, the same figures. It was as though the town itself was playing tricks on him, shifting its shape, making it impossible for him to leave. His eyes flicked to the side, and the figures were closer now, closer than before. Sarah stood just off to the side, her eyes searching him as if she were waiting for him to speak, to acknowledge what he had done. Lily, too, had moved closer, her face now illuminated in the glow of the streetlight. Her lips parted as if she were about to say something, but no words came. John was in front of him now, blocking the road, his presence solid and unyielding. His face was cold, his expression unreadable, but Mark felt it. The weight of the past, heavy in the air, pressing in from all sides. "You have to face it, Mark," the whispers said, louder now, filling the car, pressing into his ears. "You can't keep running." Mark's breath was ragged now, his vision blurred with panic. The car's heater hummed in the background, but its warmth felt distant, as if the cold from the snow outside had seeped into the car itself. He had no idea where he was anymore. The streets, the figures, they had consumed him. And now, the town was no longer a town. It was a reflection of his own guilt, his own fear, a mirror showing him the people he had wronged, the mistakes he had buried in the deepest corners of his mind. The headlights flickered again, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly into the dark, and Mark knew he was stuck in a loop. The town had turned into a maze, each turn bringing him back to the same place, to the same faces from his past. They weren't just standing there anymore. They were waiting for him to acknowledge them, to face the reality of his past and the consequences of his actions. Mark's grip on the wheel tightened further, his pulse racing in his ears. There was no escape. The faces were everywhere now, surrounding him. The town had become a prison, a place where he was forced to confront the ghosts of his past. He could not outrun it. He could not hide from it. "Face it, Mark. Face what you've done." The whispers filled the car, louder now, more insistent. Mark had no choice. He had to stop running. He had to face the past if he ever hoped to leave this town, if he ever hoped to find peace. The snow was falling harder now, thickening the air, making the world outside look like a blanket of white silence. But inside the car, Mark could hear nothing but the pounding of his own heart. The figures, the faces from his past, had gathered around him, their presence closing in from all sides. He could no longer escape them, no longer ignore the suffocating weight of the guilt that had followed him all these years. His breath was shallow, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his fingers ached. The figures stood in the snow, their faces watching him with silent judgment. Sarah, Lily, John, each of them had their own story, their own pain, their own silence. But now, in the stillness of this endless night, they were all waiting. Waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to confront what he had done. Mark's mind raced, the whispers in the air growing louder, as though the town itself was breathing with him, suffocating him in its cold embrace. The car's headlights flickered again, casting long shadows that stretched across the snow-covered ground, and the darkness outside seemed to press in against the car's fragile warmth. His breath fogged up the windshield, but it no longer offered him comfort. The quiet had turned into something oppressive, an unspoken expectation that he couldn't escape. "You can't keep running from us," the whispers said, soft but clear, as though they were coming from the very walls of the car, from the very town itself. "Face it. Face what you've done." Mark's hands trembled as he wiped the condensation from the glass, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. There was Sarah, her face full of that quiet sadness he had never understood. There was Lily, still standing there, her gaze piercing through the car's glass like a tangible weight. And John? John was no longer standing at the side of the road. He was now directly in front of the car, blocking his path, his face still unreadable, but Mark could feel the weight of the years, the unsaid words, the apologies that had never been spoken. He had wronged them all. He had hurt them, abandoned them, and now they were here, waiting for him to acknowledge the truth. The world outside felt distant, disconnected. The snow fell in a soft, hypnotic rhythm, muffling the sound of the town, making everything feel far away. But the figures remained steadfast, unmoving. They weren't just haunting him, they were a part of this town, a part of this reckoning. He couldn't run. The streets were closed off. The town had turned into a maze, looping him back to the same spot over and over again. And with every turn, the faces grew more vivid, more real. They weren't just figments of his imagination. They were people he had known, people whose lives he had touched. And they were here now, demanding something from him. Mark closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep, shaky breath. The snow had become a blur outside the car, the streetlights casting faint, flickering halos in the misty darkness. He could still hear the whispers in his mind, beckoning him forward, but there was only one way out now. He had to stop running. He had to face them, face the truth of what he had done. With trembling hands, Mark turned off the engine, the soft hum of the car fading into silence. The only sound now was the steady fall of snow on the windshield, the world outside frozen in time. The figures remained, still and silent, waiting for him to make a decision. For a long moment Mark sat there, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He knew he couldn't leave this town, not until he confronted everything he had been avoiding. The town had shifted and changed, the road had twisted and turned, but the real maze, the one that had trapped him for so long, was in his mind. The guilt, the regrets, the things left unsaid, the unresolved. With a deep breath, Mark opened the door, the cold air rushing in, sharp and biting. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he stepped outside, his feet sinking into the thick blanket of snow. The figures were closer now, their eyes locked on him, their faces unchanged. The snow continued to fall, heavy and relentless, as if the world was holding its breath. He stood still for a moment, looking at each of them. Sarah, the childhood friend he had left behind, the one who had always been there for him, even when he hadn't deserved it. Lily, the love he had never told the truth to, the one who had waited only to be abandoned. John, the man he had betrayed, who had never received the apology Mark had promised in his heart. Mark's chest tightened, and for a moment he felt as if he couldn't breathe. The weight of his past was too much, too heavy. But then something shifted. A small voice in the back of his mind whispered to him, gently, as though offering a lifeline. It's time to make it right. Mark closed his eyes, his breath visible in the cold night air. He stepped forward, closer to the figures, his heart pounding in his chest. The snow fell softly around him like a blanket of forgiveness, and for the first time he felt the weight of it lift slightly, just enough to take a step forward. "I'm sorry," Mark whispered, his voice breaking the silence, his words too soft at first, too uncertain. "I'm sorry for everything, for the things I never said, for the things I did wrong." The figures didn't move, but their faces softened just a little. Sarah's eyes, once filled with sadness, now looked almost understanding. Lily's expression shifted, her lips parting as though she were about to speak. John's stern gaze wavered just for a moment, as if acknowledging his words. The snow continued to fall, quiet and heavy, blanketing the town in a soft, serene silence. Mark took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past slowly lift as he stood there, facing them, finally facing himself. The town was no longer a maze, and the figures no longer loomed like specters from his past. They were still there, but they weren't waiting anymore. They had heard him, and in that moment, the town felt like it had exhaled. Mark turned, his steps slower now as he walked back to his car. The snow had stopped falling, and the world seemed a little clearer. The streetlights flickered once more, casting long shadows over the snow-covered road, but now those shadows felt less oppressive. The figures had gone, and Mark knew he had taken the first step towards healing. The town was quiet once more, but now it felt peaceful, as though the night itself had forgiven him.